As we think in infrastructure, where do we want to allocate capital is assets, projects, companies that are aligned to long-term structural trends. And decarbonization is probably the biggest trend right now. And so if your asset is not aligned to that trend, you can do the maths anyway, but it's going to be hard to find a buyer in 10 or 15 years, which is where we tend to hold assets for that time period. So that's why I'm surprised by the response, and it is our principal motivator to find attractive opportunities to put capital to work. And naturally, they are aligned to decarbonization. So where are we putting capital to work in Asia specifically? I think the main source of deal flow is generation. So it's really looking at renewables, so solar PV, onshore wind, offshore wind. And that's been an area we've been doing for a decade, for a long time, across Japan, Korea, also in North Asia more widely, Australia, and now with the Climate Finance Partnership, which is a partnership between Blackrock, its investors, and also governments to invest in emerging economies as well and bring capital to where it's really needed, to go back to the earlier point of where are the emissions being made, often in growing economies. So that's really the first leg, and we balance that very carefully with security of supply.
That sounds the easy part, right? Just invest in renewables.
It's not easy.
Sounds very easy.
No? I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's the place where there's a lot of deal flow, because you can see a clear commitment from governments and corporates to fund that transition. So building renewables generation capacity is quote unquote the most obvious opportunity to put capital to work, as long as you do it in a sensible manner where you can deliver returns. The second part I would say is really a wider point around how do you connect all of that renewable generating capacity to the grid. And that's where we go back to the earlier discussion panel before here, before this one. Energy has to be sustainable, for sure. It also we have to look at the cost, and we have to look at the reliability. And you've seen the last two, in the last couple of years, have become more important in some markets globally than sustainability. People are struggling with the cost of living, and also energy is a critical resource to keep the lights on, so it has to be reliable as well. So things like gas are essential. So I think we try to look at it from a holistic perspective, because we're investing for the long term. So with that in mind, transmission, midstream remains an important area for us, at least speaking for my team. We also look at how can we really optimize the consumption of energy as well as the supply. Smart meters play a big role in that in lots of markets globally. Do you really understand how you're using your electricity at home? Or does a business understand how it's using electricity, and can it optimize its usage? I would add to that as well abatement. Abatement is a key part of what we look at. We recently announced, or are about to announce, an investment in Australia where we're looking at, I think we mentioned landfill as one area, where organic landfill is a big creator of methane. And in order to offset that methane, you can actually use gas generation on site, or you can abate it and create carbon credits. And that's another area where you don't need to build new landfill. Nobody wants to do that. But there is already existing landfill in the ground, which has a 30, 40, 50-year decay curve, which is going to be there and continue to produce methane. You have to do something about that. So I think there are lots of areas outside of traditional renewables where we are identifying attractive opportunities to invest.